Well, how we doing? This is Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr., and I wish to thank you for taking the opportunity of joining me here on my YouTube channel. This is a great opportunity, and I appreciate you. So why don't you take the opportunity to like and subscribe to this respective channel as we deal with faith, finance, and leadership. I'm here to be your architect of assistance. And once again, you have an opportunity to be a partner with us here at the Value of Money Collective. So once again, I thank you for taking the opportunity of watching this video and taking advantage of the teachings and the shares on this respective channel. And you can also support by doing it via Cash App, Greg Clarke MMA, $, Greg Clarke MMA. If you desire to do it via Venmo, you can do it at Gregory Clarke MMA. Remember, Clark has the E at the end. Don't forget the E. And once again, if you want to do it via Zelle or PayPal, you can do it via my email address, which is esquire971@gmail.com. So once again, I don't desire to belabor long, but take advantage of the video that you're going to about to watch, and take advantage of being a part of the Value of Money Collective. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you like and share. Peace and love. Now enjoy the video. That's how the rich, as you heard Ms. Johnson allude to about how that Bloomberg continues to still, until this very day, is still churning money. Keep signing those contracts. People need that political information. The markets, regardless if it's the FTSE over there in London to the New York Stock Exchange here in Hang Seng, the German markets, Korean markets. There's markets all over the world. People need, this information to be shared with them. And he has an apparatus which is global, which people pay for, and they get compounded over time. So just something to think about. Are we dealing with being an employee and you're worrying about a salary? Oh man, they need to pay me $2 more an hour. And sometimes your boss will give you the $2 an hour. You think about that. $2 an hour and you make 40 hours a week. That's $80 a year. $80 a week. You got your $2 raise. So over the course of the year, you made an extra almost $4,100. But suppose they're really making 10 times your salary off of your productivity. Now, if you're paying someone, say, 60 grand a year, but their productivity generates 500,000. That's 8 times what they're paying you. I'll pay someone 60 grand a year if I know they're generating me $500,000 from that one individual. But see, my math is dealing with multiplication, where sometimes people are just dealing in addition. And that's part of the generational curse that we have to get off of ourselves when it comes to financial literacy. Okay, let's see. I see Mr. Davis has joined us back in. Mr. Mark Davis of Indiana, can you read this slide, please? So we're going to talk about some success stories. Is he here? Bueller? Let's make sure. So I know I saw him.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello?
Yes, okay, I got it.
Okay.
Success stories break. The Rothschilds created ironclad family rules about. Gotta read Megan Larger.
No problem. I got you.
American.
The Rothschilds, they created ironclad family rules about inheritance, marriage, and behavior. Their wealth as a family has lasted over 2 centuries. So we know what 2 centuries means, over 200 years. It's just the Rothschilds. And then the Rockefellers embedded philanthropy and purposeful stewardship into their family DNA. They gave each generation a mission beyond counting money, on top of the fact that, we've had, 2 members of that family end up being president of the United States here in this country. roughly 20 years apart. But the reason why I put this as a success story, because the Tracys could be here as a success story. The Richards down there in St. Martin can be this success story. The Franklins out of, the good state of Florida could be another success story. The Osasamis out of the great state of New York could be that. The Clarks could be the next success story. The Guthries, the Singletons, I can go on. The Davises, I can go on and on. The Johnsons can be. And the reason why I'm saying that is that we have the opportunity right now in this day and age with the accesses of being astute with our finances that we can easily break this cycle. This is not something that has to be only other communities experiencing. We can have this as well. Now, the real point is, are we willing to go through the hard times to allow this to happen? Because as we saw previously, we look at hard people, I'm not going to go through no hard times. See, your definition of hard times and another family's definition of hard times. Like the Kardashians had to go through hard times. They had to go through the hard times of being laughed at, vilified, joked about. Those are hard times. But now they're a billionaire family.
That can be a father as well.
So think about that. So what's your definition of hard? Is your definition of hard saying, well, baby, we're going to keep doing the same old thing and the same old stuff and the same old, and God got our back. Now, this has nothing to do with faith. And be very clear. Because you can be faithful and still have nothing to show for it. And some of you may not agree with me, but I'm coming from scripture. That's not really of God. God has already mandated that you should be having life and having it as abundantly as you so choose to have. That's why it always goes back to our human capacity of choice. What are you choosing in your day? Choose ye this day. What are you choosing to do? Are you choosing to stay the same and keep doing the same things that's going to generate the consumer mentality as African Americans? Now I'm focused on the United States, as African Americans are still the number one consumers in this country. So that just lets you know that does not mean that we don't have access to wealth, is that it just disappears into other communities' hands. And what those other communities do with it is, oh, okay, we're gonna take this money we got here, we're gonna multiply over here, we're gonna invest over here. Yeah, got responsibilities, we got things we got to take care of on a day-to-day basis, but which we're going to get into in the further part of this presentation. But ultimately, we're going to take from them people not recognizing that they should be attempting or figuring out how to circulate those dollars amongst each other. We're going to take that finances and we're going to work it over here. So sometimes it's not even a black or white thing, as Reverend Ike taught us so many moons ago. Great. Thank God for Frederick Eichencoder. Sometimes you have to be green. And at certain levels, you start to recognize people don't care about skin color at certain levels. Because if your money is green and your money is long, for some strange reason, your skin color got nothing to do with nothing else. Let you think on that one as we move to the next slide. Okay, let us see. I'm going to ask Mr. William Richards if he can read this slide for us. Is he there? Matter of fact, Coach Trev, you gonna open up your mic? Let's see if we can get Mr. Singleton to speak. He's not, watching Celtic City on HBO Max. Maybe we can get him to be here with us. Anyone else? Bueller?
I can read it.
Oh, go ahead, please.
6 rules for a lasting legacy. Be explicit. Clearly spell out your wishes for your legacy. Talk openly about money. Avoid secrets that create suspicion and family conflicts. Teach financial responsibility. Money without effort leads to poor decisions. Put it in writing. Create wills and trusts to protect your heirs.
Now, the other two is going to be on the next slide. But would anyone think about any of these first 4 rules for a lasting legacy? How these can be implemented? Or can you implement them?
I can speak on it. My mother passed away, and essentially, these 4 things were, well, except that talking about money, it was more of a modeling. So I
Mm.
watched how it was created, and I was taught the pitfalls and given the example of people who have done shenanigans and ended up in trouble. So it's all about open and honest conversation that as African Americans or people of African descent, we don't always do. So yeah, open and honest conversation is what really helps.
Excellent. Anyone else? Anyone else implement any of these, one of these 6 rules, or attempting to move in one of these 6 rules? Because one thing me and Dr. Cheryl definitely do, we talk openly about money. We're getting better. We used to be very secret squirrelish. Sometimes she loves to use that term now. And I'm like that. I can be very mute at times, and I could be moving in particular avenues and ways, and all of a sudden she would say it, and it became a resolute truth that I had to admit and start to implement. Like, wait a minute, certain things that I'm moving, it could be positive. Okay, share what I'm doing. Because if you share it, that means it's duplicatable. If it's duplicatable, that means it's actually workable. And if it's workable, then we just keep doing the right thing. And the main thing for number 4, put it in writing, that we as African Americans have to start doing. We're starting to get better. We are getting better as a community. We're creating those wills and trusts. So all of a sudden, you have those properties, or you're blessed with more than one property, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, let's just sell it. Whoa, 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 hold on. Why don't you take it out of your name and put it in a trust? Now the trust owns it. But who controls the trust? Whoever's the individuals who are authorities over the trust. So wait a minute, do I own it? Or does the entity own it? But who controls the trust? And maybe we'll have one of these mankind caves when we'll start, having those even more expansive conversations around that. Just too many times we have went through a lot of, I would say, financial misdirection in this country. The systems of generational wealth have always been apparent since the days that Jesus walked the earth. But if we don't implement them properly, or if you're not aware of them, or not even recognize at times that the Bible is a tool that can be utilized to show you wealth generating strategies. It's not just a book of faith. It gives you principles, gives you ideas. It shows you, if you do this, you can get this result. Now, what happens if you put that to practice? But too many times, especially those of us of African descent, we have a whole lot of faith. I mean, we are faithful. And I'm separating the word, just faithful. Faithful. But then, why do our communities look the way that they do? Is that by design? Whose design is it? And do we have the ability to change that design? This makes you wonder. And I'll read these 2, because this is 5 and 6. Completing the legacy rules. You can bring in professional help. Hire someone who can make unemotional decisions and tell your heirs no when necessary. That is another great thing. That's probably why some of my children don't speak to me this day, because I have the ability to say no. And I'm not saying no because I don't like you. I'm not saying no because I don't love you. I'm saying no because no is just a no. I'm not doing that. And sometimes we as African descent have to recognize sometimes you have to put your foot down and be a no. Not because of lack of love and all this stuff and want to throw all these emotions into it. No, we're not doing that. We're not throwing part of our finances or resources towards things that don't make any darn sense. Then when the stuff don't work, we want to sit there and say, well, I tried. No. Come back with a decent plan that shows that you've done the research and you understand the data or the marketplace that you're desiring to enter in, and we can see if you got your stuff together, then maybe we as a family will invest in that. But if you're just coming out of your seams because we family, then the Vanderbilt curse will fall upon you. And cultivate family projects. Create joint ventures. Find those individuals who have an ear to hear and the processing ability to say, you know what, you recognize you can't do stuff by yourself. Or charitable activities that bind generations together and push back against entropy. See, when there's a purpose beyond yourself, you start to recognize you can't go out there and get caught up on tape doing something illicit. Because then people are going to say, oh, aren't you part of that family? Or, oh, we caught this one doing this thing, and all of a sudden you make the news. Other people do it, they'll never make the news. All of a sudden your behind's on the news. They talking about you because they understand. It's like, wait a minute, you're part of that family, aren't you? Why were you out there doing that? Dropping it like it's hot. Or getting caught doing some other craziness. But then we're supposed to understand because are you part of that generation one? Were you part of generation two? Or are you just hanging out with the generation threes? It sucks. But life is a business. You made this assumption that life is life. Life is a business. That's why I remember when I was a kid, I used to love playing. I don't know if it's probably still around, and I haven't played in a long time. But I remember when I was a younger kid playing the game of life. And you went through that board and you'd spin that little thing. And, you started off, if you were a male, you started off with your blue piece. If you're a female, you start off with your pink piece and you're going through. And times you got to pay taxes or you get married or you start having kids. Remember that? And they had a little thing, and you stick the little things in it, and maneuvering through the board. There's so much truth in that, just like Monopoly. So much truth in it. It gives you the opportunity to represent the principles at hand in a playful way, but in a way that's supposed to cement certain things so you have an idea how some of these things and some of these systems work. But they didn't really want us, especially of African descent, to be positioned in those areas. But we're changing that narrative. Okay, who would like to read this slide? So we can find out who's focused and who's here with us.
I got it.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Frank.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you for the second time.
The wealth gap challenge 13 times. Wealth disparity. White household wealth is 13 times greater than black household. Is that 1/3?
Correct.
Yeah. Retirement accounts. Only 1/3 of monthly families have retirement accounts. 23,000 median value. The median value of minority families' retirement accounts.
So now let's deal with this for a second. The wealth gap challenge. White households have 13 times. When you say plus 13, see, when you hear 13 times, you know we're dealing with multiplication. Not just 1 times more, not 2 times more, that's 3 times more. 13 times more. Now, when we go to retirement accounts, that to me is the more shameful thing. Only 1/3 of minority families have retirement accounts. That means we have 2/3 of the families in our respective communities, especially here in the United States, that don't have any type of investment that's working for them. I don't care if it's that house that's been in your that's a retirement account because you can sell the house or put it in some sort of trust and get some equity out of it and have something to show for it. But 1/3, that should make you angry. It makes me pissed. And what makes it even worse is the bottom one. So even though I only got 1/3 of the families, but then when you go to the median value of what is in those few minority accounts, minority families that have retirement accounts, its value is $23,000. You tell me what you're gonna do with $23,000 in 2025. And you're talking about that's the value. We're not talking about, you're getting $23,000 a year as the pension. No, we're saying that the total value of that retirement account for that particular minority family is only $23,000. What in the hell is going on here in 2025? There's something wrong. I'm sorry. Anyone have any thoughts before I move on to the next slide? Because this pissed me off. And I was doing the research on it. It's like, wait a minute.
I think this is a perfect example of socialization being an issue. And culturally, certain things are demonized, and certain things that are actually very profitable are stayed away from and ostracized when other people try to do it because of cultural norms and certain family backgrounds, just ignorance of certain things. So this problem is going to continue because it's a lot bigger than just information, for example. It has a lot to do with socialization, that has to do with background, that has to do with culture, that has a lot to do with. And most people aren't wired in a way where they are willing to go against the masses and mass consciousness. It may seem simple, but it's not. So it's really not a surprising thing to me. You see it all the time.
Mm. Thank you for that. Anyone else?
Yeah, of course I looked it up. And then the data that I'm seeing is that there's a 15x disparity between white and black
Oh,
household.
I was trying to be nice. I was attempting to be nice.
Because like the average net worth from 2024 for a white household, 1.4 million.
Mm,
Black household, $311,000.
mm,
That is depressing.
mm. Yeah, but we got faith. Yeah.
Faith without works is dead.
Come on, girl. You bet. I mean, as if I was in a house of the Lord, and it says, "You're talking right." She's in the text. As my seminarian professors would have told me, if you're in the text, even if it make you go ooh, and it feels if you're in the text, you're in the text. And too many times we look at some of the things that are positioning us that we can be utilizing not only as a basis of faith. No, faith, no, that's the foundation. That's God is above all things. That's not the issue. The issue is even God recognize, okay, what is it that you're doing with your gifts and talents? Are you out there multiplying them? Are you out there shaking and moving? Are you out there positioning yourself so you can have something to come in, and then you know what to give to God, how to reinvest the rest, and then all of a sudden you start to see these areas of multiplication happening? Or are you just a consumer? And it just feels good to be an employee that someone is cutting your check, while they're living in their big house in some nice suburb, but you may be living in an area where, it looks like you wouldn't want to invite a decent individual to come visit you. This is all I can afford. This is my neighborhood. This is how my people act, and this, that, and the third. And you start giving out every excuse under the sun. And it's like, okay, we got to stop giving excuses. You got to start generating a space where the excuses are no longer going to be accepted, and we can't accept them. Any other thoughts before we move on? We got to do better. We have to do better. Okay, who would like to read this one? Building Wealth, the 70-30 Rule.
That we benefit.
And who's speaking? Okay, if it's Mr. Richard.
Did you call on me?
No. It says, yeah, Mr. Singleton, why don't you read this slide?
Okay. Yep, okay. Let's see. Building wealth, the 70-30 rule. Live off 70% of income. Cover daily expenses while saving 30%. Discipline yourself to thrive with within this margin.
Okay, pause right there. That's the first part. Can you live off 70% of your income? Because now that 30%, even though it says while saving 30%, part of that, you still got to give your tithes. If you're a faithful person, still give your tithes and offerings out of that 30%. But you should be living off the 70. And what does the second part say, Mr. Singleton?
Create an emergency fund. Cover 3 to 6 months of expenses as a buffer for the unexpected.
Pause. While you're doing the living off the 70, that doesn't mean that out of that 30, after you do your tithes and stuff like that and start working all the other stuff going on, that we just start spending everything else. You start to recognize, how do I maintain a certain lifestyle? Based upon, are you overspending? Because when if you're circulating appropriately, you can't over-circulate. You can't overspend. So after a while, when you get to that point that you're creating that emergency fund and you have, oh my God, if I have 3 to 6 months of expenses as a buffer somewhere, because that shouldn't be the end all be all. But that's just a buffer. That's just to show that you are being a wise steward over the resources that you have. So say, that pipe busts in your house or something happened. All of a sudden, you're not tapping it from the 70. Now all of a sudden, we got this nest egg over here that we've been saying for the unexpected. We can tap into the unexpected, and then after we've taken care of that, then we start to replenish the unexpected. Then we still replenish that fund. You don't tap into the emergency fund and says, we have to use $2,000 from the emergency fund. Okay, so that means we have to figure out how we're going to replenish that. That may take a little bit of time, but whatever, and you stay diligent and consistent, it'll happen. And what does the last part say?
Save 15% for retirement. Prioritize tax advantage accounts. Prepares you to leave an inheritance for generations.
As Ms. Johnson alluded to, as she was doing her trustee research, when she kept emphasizing, because I heard her when she was speaking, she was really harping on that tax strategy. And be surprised why, the rich don't like to pay capital gains tax. Because capital gains tax is not employee-based tax. That means they made some investments, they allowed their money to work for them, and now all of a sudden, they may have come into a wonderful windfall. They want to pay as least amount to the federal government or to the state government as possible. So if that taxable rate at the capital gains, depending upon what it is at 10 or 15%, yeah, they may let that off. But then, of course, then they have tax strategies because then they being philanthropic over here. They gave some money to some kids over here, or they found some other children or other situations, excuse me, other situations that they can give some of their wealth over there. And all of a sudden, all that giving starts lowering their taxes that they owe the government. Then after a while, depending upon if it was a real successful year, the government ends up owing them money even though they made money. Who would have thunk that? How'd they play that game? They must have stole something. They didn't steal a thing. They read, they figured out how to play the game. They're playing the game well. But sometimes we have some in our community get upset when they get all riled up. Like, what are we getting riled up about? Did we take the time to be diligent and not just have our children just think about hoop dreams and think about, okay, you're going to be like they do in some other communities. Okay, you're going to be the lawyer in our family. You're going to be the doctor. You're going to be this. You're going to be the. No, I have a choice. I want to do what I do. No, no, no. You don't have a choice. You're going to be this. You're going to be that. Then you turn around, as we saw the example with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, all of a sudden they have sustainability in their wealth. Because they're positioned in those areas where, oh, yeah, because you were positioned here, you're making, even though you get a salary, now part of your salary goes back into this trust where we're doing some investments over here. And then you recognize, even though you are contributing towards this trust, the trust is over here doing this and buying asset building things. And next thing you know, you turn around, well, I got to give part of my money to the family trust. Idiot. Your contributions are contributed to $10 million worth of income or worth of possibility for the family, which you get a cut of. Because you weren't the only one contributing. Everyone that was thrown into the cake. Oh. So when you hear those other communities have conversations, yeah, I was talking to my child at 12, 14, 15, yeah, you're gonna contribute to the household, you're gonna do this, you're gonna show you how to work with your money so your money works for you instead of you just always working for it. That's what it all boils down to. So as we come to the close of this conversation, any thoughts, anything that come to mind for anyone as we dealt with some of the goals that we need to set and how certain rules that we can start to implement if we so choose? I see someone's hand is raised. The floor is yours. I guess no one has their hand raised. Was that a previous hand? Oh, Mr. Guthrie. The floor is yours, Mr. Guthrie.
It was a very, very powerful session. And one of the things that screams to me now is the power to be transformer. When it come on to this kind of conversation, it needs to become normalized in families frequently. And I like the thing that you said. It's not popular to use the word no, but it's very necessary. And a lot of the choices that we give descendants is not wise. Some things should be instructional. You give directions to learn certain things as opposed to an option to do. Thank you.
Excellent. Anyone else before we close for tonight? Well, these conversations are meant to be thought-provoking. Sometimes they're meant to tee you off. They should piss you off. Like as I was looking through some of the data, like now I understand why when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said in 1967, I think I've led my people into a burning house. Because he helped to get you civil rights. He even helped to make sure that they couldn't, do some of the disparities in voting, but we had no economics. Without economics, how can the community become free? Yeah, we can vote. Yeah, we can go to our church without them sicking dogs on us. Okay. How do we become empowered so we move into that next step? So we have the resources that we can build upon and be requisite. So I don't have to be jealous of what my friend has over there. I'm comfortable with what I have. I respect what they have. And they work in their angle. I'm working my angle. And if I know that Mr. Johnson over there has something that I need, my dollar goes to him first. And all of a sudden, Johnson's dollar goes to Tracy. And Tracy's dollar go to Franklin. And Franklin's dollar goes to Singleton. And Singleton's dollar goes to Sammy. Now all of a sudden, I think I said about 6 or 7 names just then. That's how other communities do it. But as we've spoken over time and we recognize, and it's sad that it's still like that in our community, that dollar is not in our community. If it stays a couple of hours, gone. See, Mr. Singleton's hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, when you learn about when we're learning about this, it's understanding that I'm learning a new language. Um and I understand almost like what you say, and it could be bad because our dollar only stays in the community at the moment for a couple hours. But I do see I see that reasoning of that, other communities have been doing it for centuries. And they've been doing it for centuries. That's become part of their instinct. We've got decades that we've been doing it, and so it is on us. It's incumbent upon us to make sure um, that we pass that along and start to do it ourselves in our practice and have that goal, and have a goal like that. Put it out there that within the next 5 years or 10 years, my, 50 to 90, or 50 to 75% of my spending is going to be in the Black community. You could have that as a goal. Say, I'm going to start to do the research and I'm going to set that goal that within 5 years it's going to be 90% or what have you, or 100% or whatever it will be. Um, this is where we start to change the language and change the dynamic, to really pass that on. These conversations are what changes the cycle, what changes the generation. Um, what now is going to be what was regular for me to say, oh, I can just go to this site and just order this and just order this. But now I know what's behind that site, and I can say, you know what? Let's start to tick things off the list. Let's start to say, okay, I mean, that 30% may seem like a lot. So let me start with 5 for the first 6 months. And then by the end of 2025, I'm up to 15%, and then by mid 2026, I'm at 20, mid 20, you aim for that, but at least you get there because there's a lot of life for us to live. Every one of us here has years to go. And I think it's important that we set, um, well, I don't want to speak for everyone. It's important for me that I set reasonable goals and say, if I haven't started doing it now, then I can at least say, let me set this goal and then have someone hold me accountable to that and say, are you doing this percentages? Are you doing that? Because it's a lifestyle change. And not only, and for me, and please, and I am open to correction. For me, I think of it as a lifestyle change. And once I change that lifestyle, then I can change the generations because eventually I'll pass that on to my family, to the children I'll have, and to passing that along, these things here. So you start with the lifestyle and then you move on to the generation, but it's a matter of setting those milestones to get there, of saying, okay, because the numbers you put up, definitely the 70 to 30, the percentages of the black households compared to white households, definitely it's to me not it doesn't bring me down. It's it puts it out in plain language. It's better than living in ignorance. And now it's like, okay, this is what's to aim for. Now we can change the conversation. So it won't be about the music and about the culture and about this fashion. This will be about raising up the level of our communities and about associating and hearing and applying, because I can hear it, and as long as I'm applying it and being accountable to that, that's that's important, and that's the key thing. So just wanted to contribute that, and I'm complete.
Excellent. Anyone else before we close? Anyone else? Want to make sure we don't give everyone an opportunity to make sure that their voice is in the matter.
I will, Dr. Clark, it's Calvin
Yeah,
here.
go ahead.
I will say that a lot of the data that was shared today was eye-opening, even from the biblical standpoint here in the chat, um, to tie everything together and to hear that us as a people, based off data, that some of this is the reality. And I'm relatively young myself, so it just makes me put things in perspective and to move completely different now. And I'm complete.
Excellent. That's what it's about. If a conversation doesn't stimulate you towards some level of movement, and that's how you can tell if a teaching is relevant or not. If it just allows you to stay the same, then it's like a church. It could be a church service where we're hooping and hollering for 2, 3 hours, and the music is banging and the drums is hitting, and it's like, end of the day, you still going to that, going back to that community that looks like you definitely don't want to stay at, but that's just your reality. Where's the change? Where's the evolution? Where is the growth? And then you turn around and look at other people and say, oh, we're growing over here. So it sucks to pull, or sobering to see the data, but it's needful. Why? Because we have to be responsible enough to recognize that the data has to change, and it's up to us to change the data. It's up to us to start to recognize we don't necessarily have to be consumers. We can be creators. We can figure out those areas in the marketplace. Even if you work for someone, you got your side hustle, that's great. Because you can probably take advantage of some of these tax rules that are trying to be embedded and turned into law. Because God never said you won't ever deal with people that are unjust. Even God blessed the unjust steward. If you don't believe that, you need to go in your New Testament and go find the story. Then God bless the unjust steward. He's unjust. He does things that are so terrible and wrong. Says yes. He was unjust in many of his ways, but the way that he wasn't unjust in was how he maneuvered with his resources. Now, it may maneuver in ways like we can see certain people who are bandying themselves around during this particular time frame and season, especially in the United States. Yes, very unjust. But am I going to let that unjust person stop me from being as great as I so choose to be? Then I'm giving that unjust person too much power. Now I need to be aware. I got to keep my eyes on you. I ain't stupid. I'm not going to put my head in the sand and say, you can, that part, God still is working with me on that. You ain't going to slap me in my face and I'm giving you the other cheek. Now, you slap me in my face, I'm punching you in yours. That's just me. So God's still working with me on that aspect. But when it comes to making sure that I can be at least one of the catalysts to share and develop a conversation that we can start to elevate and start to change our mindset and recognize how we can appropriately not be consumers in this country. You still have to consume, you still have to purchase items, you still need things. That's not the issue. But to be educated, you are going to consume. And then recognize that part what you used to be a consumer with, now you're becoming an investor. You're recognizing the impact and power that your resources can bring back a return. And if that's what we're doing here, then we're doing the right thing. It's not to make anyone bad. It's not a good or a bad thing. It's recognizing what is your choice, because your life will show the measure of your choices. If you're part of that 2/3 that don't have a retirement account, you chose that. It sucks, but you chose that. You have a bunch of rent receipts and you have nothing that's an income producing asset, you chose that. So as we start to come to a close for this day, these are the different ways that you can support the platform. As you can see, we did a little upgrade, a little update. Sometimes it's good to do a little update. As my wife is about to come in towards the tail end. You have, you can do it via Cash App, where you can do $ Greg Clarke MMA, or you can do it via Venmo, which is Gregory Clarke MMA. You desire to do it via Zelle, which we use to produce and promote the product and get more eyes and more individuals here. And plus, you can invite people, share the link. If you were able to sign into the Zoom link, you have the ability to share that same Zoom link with others who you feel that would benefit for these type of conversations and teachings and goal setting. Please, the more the merrier. And PayPal and Zelle and PayPal are the same thing. My email address, esquire971@gmail.com. So once again, as we close out, we'll say, have a great week. Keep allowing yourself to be mindful of your resources. Continue to create, be empowered, be stimulative, but recognize that you have all the power within your own hands to be the choices that you ultimately make. So make it a great week, and I'll see you all next Tuesday for the next Virtual Mind Concave. Peace and blessings to all.
Thank you, Dr. Clarke.
Very welcome. Very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings. Thought I heard some rumbling, maybe some thunder or anything like that, but okay.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay.
It's not from the Boston fans, but anyway.
So, yeah.
I know it's not from New York, so I can take it. It ain't coming from Boston or New York. Everyone else, you have a great week and enjoy yourself. And maybe next week we'll console Mr. Davis when he comes in, depending upon.
Oh, that's rough. Such a young team too. Wow, they made it. Oh my goodness. The youth.
Y'all have a great week.
Yeah, have a good night.